Good morning. My name is Gina Constantikopoulos, and I am with Matter. We run the Paratus Digital Health Accelerator for the BARDA Accelerator Network Hub. So happy to have you join me here today, the first of two webinars and information sessions that we're running around our non-dilutive funding opportunity. Great to have you here. First, let me share the agenda for today's session. First, I'm going to provide you a brief matter overview. Then we'll talk a little bit about the Paratus Digital Health Accelerator. We'll dive in specifically around the non-dilutive funding opportunity, and then we'll leave a little bit of time at the end around question and answers. This session is set up such that unfortunately you can't come off camera and ask me questions directly. Within your Zoom feature, you will see that there's a Q&A option. Please submit your questions there. My colleague, Kania Skaj, will be reviewing questions as they come in for us to address in that Q&A period. First off, a brief overview around Matter. We are a healthcare incubator and innovation hub that has worked with over 1,000 startups. We were founded in 2015 around the mission to accelerate the pace of innovation in healthcare and are focused on that. We're organized as a nonprofit, and we really fundamentally believe that the fastest, most effective way to accelerate innovation is through collaboration. In service of that mission, we do several things. We incubate startups, we do a lot of events, and then we work with corporate innovation. This is a snapshot around kind of the work that we do. Our startups come from many different areas of health, including digital health and life sciences. And our partners come from really kind of all the key sectors. So life sciences, payers and providers, associations, universities, et cetera. And against this, we've worked with over 1,000 startups, over 130 industry-leading organizations, and have really helped to connect with over 50,000 different healthcare entrepreneurs and innovators. While we're based in Chicago, we are global in scope. We have been in 100 cities, 20 countries, and continue to kind of expand that footprint and have worked with a number of partners. So that's just a little bit about Matter. But I know many of you are here to talk about the non-dilutive funding opportunity. So let's step into that a little bit further. Matter is part of the BARDA Accelerator Network, and you might be wondering, what does that exactly mean? So under Health and Human Services, we have the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response, where BARDA, or the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, sits. And their mandate is really to create preparedness for things like vaccine therapies, diagnostic tools for public health emergencies, and chemical, biological, nuclear, radiological, or CBRN, pandemic and influenza, and emerging infectious disease. As part of this mandate for public health readiness, they determined that they wanted to create really kind of a best-in-class set of accelerator networks to support both the startup community as well as kind of promising areas that connect to this readiness. And they're listed at the bottom here, and I'll share this. So the 5 hubs, one focuses on vaccine and therapeutics, another on diagnostic and medical devices, special populations, enabling technology and digital health. We're really excited to be Paratus, which means ready for anything, the digital health hub for BARDA. While I will be talking about our non-dilutive funding opportunities, you might be asking yourself, oh, my solution kind of is in between or spans a couple of these different hubs. Please feel free to reach out to us if you're not sure where you fit. And I will also say, because of this kind of cross um, enabling group. We have opportunities that are happening in many of our partner hub organizations that we'd love to point you to if you're just not sure. Collectively, we are fostering the growth of global health security and in the ecosystem here. As part of the Paratus initiative, we are doing several different things. One is that we are running accelerators. I'm really happy to share our first accelerator cohort kicked off this January, and we'll go through March. We'll be opening a second accelerator cohort for applications in late March. We're doing funded studies, which is what we'll be talking about today. And then we're actually also supporting existing BARDA portfolio companies as well as additional program support. So many of you may have already visited the Paratus non-dilutive funding page. For those of you who have not yet visited it, you can go to matter.health/Paratus or matter.health. And at the top of our website, you'll see a yellow kind of promotional bar that will take you directly to the Paratus site. You can also go to any of our challenge pages and see the Paratus non-dilutive funding opportunity. Within the page is a lot of information, and I'm going to be sharing and repeating much of that here today. So let me take you just a little bit through what the process for this will look like. And I might just ask my colleague Kay to please drop the web page URL into the chat so that all of you can reference it. So preliminary applications are currently open. If you go to our splash page, applications are due January 31st. We will be evaluating all of the initial applications and then selecting mission-aligned technologies and solutions to do essentially a secondary submission. So a full submission by the end of February. From that time, we'll be working collaboratively with each startup around the project that you have submitted, and we'll begin awards as of March 2025. And then the projects will begin in March. Some of those projects that you submit may not kick off in March. Some of them may be scheduled, for instance, to start in June and go forward from there. But we'll determine that in a very collaborative basis as we go through each of these different milestones for the submission process. This is a snapshot of the technologies of interest. I've shortened it for the purposes of sharing this on our information session here. I really encourage you to go to the non-dilutive funding page and read through the kind of specific language around each of these areas to see if your solution is a fit. But we are looking for technologies to enhance clinical trials. So this is including things like ensuring that we have diverse populations, ensuring that there's great process, identification of potential subjects, etc. We're also interested in at-home digital diagnostics and telemedicines, especially looking at solutions that are tied to medical countermeasures and can kind of input around that, especially using things like artificial intelligence and machine learning. We're looking for digital twin technologies, again, understanding how this can support the medical countermeasure space, whether it's through something that would support vaccines, diagnostics, device, etc. Again, looking for things that may use AR and machine learning. Looking for novel approaches that collect, process, and evaluate real-world evidence. So platforms that help us look at information related to medical countermeasures technologies. And then last but not least, integrated capabilities to assess in chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear mass casualty events, especially pre-hospital evaluations. Again, interested in different systems that allow us to do that more effectively. There's some more specific language within the non-dilutive funding page itself that I, again, encourage you to visit. One thing I will say, and many of the you might have the question, well, I'm coming with a slightly different technology from a different area. This might be a new use case for me. What I would say is if you feel like you're maybe not exactly a bullseye, but something around the ring, part of the way that we expand use case is through your narrative and having you connect those dots for us. So if your solution is something that seems like it's an adjacency, but you think it's really relevant, it's really on you and in your application to help us understand how you see the connective opportunity from your solution to these kind of core areas of interest. As part of this, there are two kinds of formats of projects that we're soliciting. One is quick hit projects, and one is in-depth projects. So to unpack what we mean by this is really this non-dilutive funding opportunity is intended to be something that we can really help you advance rapidly. So these are projects that would be 6 or fewer weeks in length, and we're looking to do funding between about $20,000 to $40,000. Again, each one of your projects will have its own timeline and budget associated with it. And we're going to accept approximately 12 projects in this bucket. The second area are in-depth projects. So these are projects that are a little bit of a longer footprint, approximately 12 weeks in scope. And again, these will be funded between 100 and 180,000, and we're looking to fund around 4 projects. Again, part of our rationale is that we know that funding opportunities are sought after, but want to be realistic about where the opportunity lies. I will also say, just because you receive one project doesn't prevent you from applying later or doing a follow-on study. So just because you apply, for instance, for a quick hit project initially doesn't mean that you would not later on be a candidate for an in-depth project down the road. So what are some of the ways that funding could be used? So we're really hoping to ensure that technologies will help get to that next milestone or value inflection point. So perhaps that means that you need to make an investment in building out a new part of your product. Perhaps you need to do some validation in the marketplace, and we're going to talk about this in depth. And you need to engage a study site to prove out a key thesis for your solution. And then, understanding how can you take something that's maybe in existence and start to scale it to enable faster dissemination of this countermeasure. Maybe this is something that you have a solution and you think there's a novel way that you could reduce costs or improve a platform that's already in development. So, when we say what are some examples of studies, really these are not necessarily exclusively clinical, which a lot of people kind of jump to when we're thinking about healthcare solutions. It's really looking across a number of different kind of areas. So we have these kind of listed as examples, and these are just starting points of like technical, clinical, usability, or cost. So for instance, from a technical standpoint, perhaps you're interested in testing a security feature or you're interested in a sandbox integration. From a clinical perspective, perhaps you're really interested in getting input from clinicians around your solution versus an existing standard of care, or workflow testing to understand time spent using your solution versus something already in market. We can do focus groups, we could do surveys, etc. There could be financial or cost things, which are more on that traditional business building side of things. So understanding perhaps what is the reimbursement pathway for your product, or determining, what cost outcomes might be for certain kind of clinical uses. So this is, again, a snapshot. You can find it linked within the non-dilutive funding page, but to provoke some areas of opportunity for you and your teams around what are those key things that you would want to test that really would help advance your solution. One of the things that we're really excited about for the Paratus Hub is that we have actually identified numerous health systems and industry partners that have indicated interest in being a site. And so what that means is if you have a solution and you're hoping to test one of those key hypotheses that we just talked about in one of those areas, but with an actual site. Part of what our program can do is do site partner matching. So when within the application, you will be queued to ask, you will be asked rather, whether you need site matching as part of this, something to consider. And we can, on our end, reach out, identify potential partners, and incorporate that into kind of the funding footprint. The other thing that I will say is if you have an existing partner or an existing site and you want to pull that through, let us know that also. That's helpful for us, and we can further determine how that can be fit into the footprint. Some of the selection criteria for you all to keep in mind as you submit your application, these are the things that we're really looking for. So we're looking to see, do you meet the areas of interest? Do you fit clearly into the medical countermeasure space? Going back to kind of the beginning of the session where I was talking about our areas of interest and being able to really kind of create the narrative around your solution, this is really important here for us to make sure that you are a fit, or if you're not an obvious fit, how that can be a fit. The next is demonstration of the quality, feasibility, and scalability of your proposed solution. So, where are you in your development stage? Do you have an MVP? Are you in market? Do you have existing customers? How is it different from other things in market? Next is differentiation of the solution from the competitive landscape. Are you like other things that are out there? Are you something completely novel? If you are like other things, what are your advantages or disadvantages comparatively? And just kind of sharing that with us. The next bullet is around the capability of the participant. And even though participant is singular, it's really the question around your team. Do you have the right team, expertise, and skill set to take a solution forward? That also includes things like your advisors and kind of technical subject matter experts, so that we can get a sense of the direction that you're going in. We also want to really understand what is the funding opportunity that you're interested in, and how is it going to really help you get to that next inflection point. And last but not least, the extent to which we think that our funding of your solution can really help that advancement, mission fit. So let's talk a little bit for some of you around why you would apply for that. So beyond the notion that this is a non-dilutive funding, you'll receive a project manager from Matter who will be designated to help you throughout the course of your project. You also will receive a mentor throughout the course of the program. The non-dilutive funding, as I've already kind of unpacked a little bit, will be time bound. So for instance, we'll have a project plan with milestones to really help us understand what that key question is that we'll be answering at the end of the project. Additionally, other industry mentors and experts will be made available to you to help you advance your concept during the footprint of the project. And ultimately, we have the opportunity to make introductions to investors, partners, and potential clients and customers. So who should apply? We're looking for some entrepreneurs and university-backed researchers. The hope is that you have an existing, at least proof of concept. I know there are a lot of early stage concepts out there, but looking for something that is not just back of the napkin, that you're a little further along and you have at least an MVP. Hopefully you've done some sort of validation work in the marketplace and that you are, really looking to kind of drive forward. It's global in scope. So if you are outside of the United States, this is open to you. We want to see, again, some evidence of product market fit and business model potential, hopefully baked into this. One other note is the program will be conducted virtually. So the hope is that opens up the opportunity to a number of different people. And we estimate that it will be approximately 5 hours a week during the duration of the study that you will need to commit, with some weeks being higher and some weeks being lower. So hopefully this is a good kind of overview of the program. I'm now going to pivot to questions. The first question that I see is, can the $180 upper limit be made up of several smaller and individual or independent components, like a number of different items? Yes, I mean, the notion is that if you have any one of the projects, you might need, time for some of your staff there, or you might need to have, for instance, let's say you're working on a UX feature, maybe there's time for a designer, but on top of that, you want to then test that feature, and you indicate that you would want some time for a site partner to help validate. It can be not just one thing, you can have a couple things within that overall footprint. So hopefully that answers the question. If not, please submit a follow-on in the Q&A feature. And again, that's from David Wolfson. Next question I see here is, we have a physical sensor paired to a patient application. Can we pursue this program? And it says for the diabetic population. So yes, a physical sensor. So just from a standpoint, they're talking about the different hubs. Even though we're the digital health hub, that encompasses a lot of things. We recognize that a lot of devices have software elements, and those software elements are critical to the way that the products work. So yes, absolutely, that's a fit from a kind of overall approach standpoint. Regarding the diabetic population, I think that needs to fall into one of the different categories of buckets. And again, you need to use that narrative to explain why this particular population would be relevant, or your solution would be coming out of that specific population and is relevant to a broader population around whether it's telemedicine or a CBRN thing. Again, whichever one of those kind of categories you're interested in kind of aligning towards. Next question. Are there specific health domains, for instance, pediatric cancer, adolescent mental health, aging in place, and can a company submit in multiple areas? Again, the areas of interest kind of were laid out at the onset. So I invite you to look closely across that. And most of these are around things like, infectious, emerging infectious disease, et cetera. So really that medical countermeasures space that we are most interested. But all that said, recognizing that that goes across, swaths of our population. So for instance, if your solution is intended for older adults and it has relevance, though it's really benefiting a specific demographic or customer segment, I think just being able to use the narrative opportunity to unpack how it is relevant within that case is the best approach. Next question here. Can projects be assessed for both project types regardless of which they choose? Yes, I mean, so I will say we'll be looking to right size. So once we've gone through the initial application period, when we are inviting people to come back to do a secondary application and then working towards a contract, there will be sort of a massaging process for us to look at, what are timelines, what are some of the milestones associated with the projects. That said, based on kind of our overall funding and footprint, we will be having more of the smaller dollar awards than the larger dollar awards. So just keep that in mind. If we have a lot of people apply for kind of the larger dollar footprints, what might end up happening is we might come back and have to say, oh, your solution's super interesting. Can we break it into something that's smaller that maybe fits into kind of the quick hit category? So keep that in mind as you're making a decision about, how you want to present the project opportunity. The next question I see here is any level of business standing having an LLC required to apply? So for that, the answer is, ideally you would have some market traction. So ideally you would be moving towards having an established company where you are, however you choose to be organized, an LLC, incorporated, whatever. Ideally, you would kind of have that in place. But that said, especially on some of the university-backed type of solutions, we recognize that that might be something that's in process. Within the application, if you can just indicate what your roadmap is and what your path to kind of those key business milestones for things like incorporation, that would be really helpful. Next question. What is the geographic scope of this project? Great question. So BARDA being part of the Health and Human Services, our audience is really the U.S. population. That said, the U.S. works collaboratively across the world and is a global health leader. So for instance, if solutions are ex-U.S. and have been deployed elsewhere, doesn't necessarily mean that they're not a fit. I would encourage you to still apply, though the U.S. Population is really the dominant focus for the program. Next question I see here is, besides timeline, how do you know if your project is a quick form, in-depth or in-depth project? I would say think a little bit about complexity and, be really realistic. Part of what we want to do as a byproduct of this program is to provide startups quick wins. We know that answering key questions can be the real impetus for making a next step, whether that's with an investor or a conversation that you're having in the marketplace with a potential customer, et cetera. So we want you to think about, where are those real wins in a discrete way? And some of that is also being realistic about, okay, what is it that I'm looking to do? I'm looking to do a set of clinician conversations. Okay, that can realistically happen maybe within 6 weeks. If you're talking about something that might be like a workflow study, something that has a little bit more granularity associated with it, perhaps that's a little bit of a longer footprint. So some of that will be, based on kind of your sense of how long your project will take. But as I indicated, there's a multi-phase kind of application process, and part of that will be collaborating directly with the Paratus and the BARDA team, as well as our subject matter experts, to make sure that things are right fit. Next up, can we apply to both in-depth or quick hit projects and have the BARDA team assess what is best fit, or do we have to choose between the two? What I would encourage is for each company to pick one submission, just so that we don't have, a lot of duplicates out there. Plus, I don't want everyone to have to do duplicative work of adding in lots of double questions. If there's something where you think that there's a case where you could be a fit for both, we can have you add that into the narrative. If that is the situation, and I'm sure it will be for a number of you, please reach out to paratus@matter.health, and we can schedule time with you to help provide some additional guidance around how you should approach the application. Next question I see is from Julian, and it says, so you are not interested in developments for protecting the privacy of patients' data from ransomware and data breaches? Thank you, Julian, for that question. No, some of the data security at the upfront is not really part of the mandate. It's more really focused on those medical countermeasures and looking at, for instance, how data is used in that process, some interoperability, but not necessarily data protection. I'm going to try to go through in the next about 5 minutes or so these additional questions. Just a couple quick notes. We've recorded this session and we'll make it available after the fact. For anyone who has not gotten their question read, you can again email paratus@matter.health, and we will be happy to answer questions either via email or set up a time to meet with you. I'm going to try to get through the balance of the questions here to close out. The next question I see is from Elizabeth at Help. What are examples of appropriate study partners like university partners or pharmaceutical companies? Um, those are all potential study partners that you may be working with. We have, for instance, a number of health systems that we are able to work with. So, for instance, if your solution was something that was for use in an emergency department but was untested, you can indicate that you're interested in site partner matching, and we could say, great, network of health systems that we're working with whom might have an emergency department team that we could leverage against, for instance, a survey. So I know I'm working in a lot of kind of hypotheticals here, but really the opportunities are quite bespoke. And so I would encourage you to think about what your company may need and to articulate and identify that. The next question is from Sanjeev, and it says, what are the key evaluation parameters for stage one preliminary versus final awards and any specified award amounts? So what I would say is, the first kind of set of evaluations are what I shared. And I think the thing that's really important around that is really fit is, obviously very critical. So ensuring that you have made it clear that your solution is falls into kind of the solution sets that we're interested in. And some of that is, we're going to evaluate the universe of things that come in and make decisions based on, what seems to be kind of the project type that we're interested in alongside, the fit of the company. So we'll be looking across the different application pools to decide who becomes the invited to that next level. One thing I will say is just because you've applied and are not necessarily advanced this first time doesn't mean that we're not going to maybe come back to some of the initial applicants later on in our process. It's really a great way to get into the Paratus and BARDA slipstream, so to speak, at large. So I would encourage you to at least kind of get an application in if you have some interest. How long is the program? So we'll work with you for usually those 6 week projects or up to 12-week projects. That said, there will be kind of the application process, and we expect that there'll be some work to do some scoping and likely a few weeks, 1 to 2 weeks at the close of the program to look at kind of outcomes and things of that notion. So, roughly 2 months to about 3.5 months are the different project timelines. Is this project annually offered? Yes. So Matters arrangement and all of the BARDA hub networks will be kind of offering these non-dilutive fundings on a recurring basis. What will happen is we will open applications and then close applications so that we can kind of evaluate the group of solutions that we have. At some point, we will reopen later in this year another opportunity to apply for non-dilutive funding. So if now doesn't feel the right time for your company, you can certainly come back later. Is there any guidance on what outcomes you expect in the 6 weeks? No, we'd want to see advancement. So we're not expecting a positive or negative outcome. So for instance, let's say you wanted to get clinical feedback on a solution or a software interface. It doesn't necessarily need that feedback all needs to come back happy. It's that you get the feedback. What is it that you need to help advance the product forward? And it doesn't necessarily have to inform something that's the next step. It might say, okay, well, we learned something and now we need to go back and make some adjustments, or this approach wasn't right. We need to think about regulatory in a different way. Is there a time limit regarding how quickly we can spend the funds? We want to conduct a clinical trial, which would take 12 to 18 months. That's a little bit outside of the scope of the program. Again, these are intended to be more discrete studies and programs. So perhaps there could be a portion of a trial. So maybe it's developing a plan that would be right fit for that 12-week period. So what I would say is if you're looking at something that's a lot longer, think about what that first step is and how it might fit. What do these 5 weekly hours consist of during the program? So the 5 weekly hours will consist of meeting with a mentor, working on the project itself, meeting with your project manager to ensure that things are moving forward. So some of those are meetings, some of those are mentoring, and some of that is just true teamwork that you will need to do. And again, that's an estimate. Do beneficiaries need to justify costs, or is the funding provided as a lump sum? You will need to give us a budget as we get further in the application process so that we can understand what the various line items are and kind of your estimates for it. And it will be milestone-based payments. So for instance, if you're working on a 12-week project, there might be something that will happen week 4, week 8, and then again at the closure of the program. So funds will be dispersed on a milestone basis. I think what we can do is look to again, email Paratus at matter.health if your question was not answered. I also invite, we are doing another session on January 28th. So if you want to join that session as well. And last but not least, I will answer one more question here. Are there any restrictions for candidates that may be the recipient of other accelerator or non-dilutive funding programs? No, we'll ask you a little bit about other programs that you're participating in, but there is no barrier if you're currently or in other programs or receiving things like, SBIR, NIH funding or things like that. There's no conflict. Again, thanks for the interest. Lots of additional questions here, but please reach out. So happy that you could join us and please apply. Thanks.